Now, recently I created a video called The Best Extensions for Visual Studio Code in 2023 with ChatGPT. Now, within the comments of this video, an interesting thread emerged. Now, the context of this comment was that as a beginner developer, Stack Overflow can feel like a daunting place because asking a question basically can have a backlash of negativity. Now, up until I read this comment, I never really thought about this topic in any detail. And I must admit, my first instant thought was basically people need to learn how to use Stack Overflow better. However, after a few seconds, I realized the foolishness of my thinking. Now, just because I've used the same process for undertaking research for years, that doesn't mean it's the right way or even the best way. So what we're going to do in today's video is try and make some data-driven decisions. What we're going to do is consider, is Stack Overflow toxic? Can ChatGPT responses be trusted? And more importantly, are developers turning towards ChatGPT and away from Stack Overflow? Now, before we get to the good stuff, if this is the first time you've come across my channel and you want to learn more about ChatGPT, programming, or web development, do not forget to hit subscribe and like right now. Now, my name is John and I release a video every single Sunday aimed at making you a better programmer. So remember, sub and like. Now, with that all said and done, let's see where this research leads us. If you go online, it is easy to find lots of Reddit discussions and even YouTube videos discussing the perceived ever-increasing toxicity developers are experiencing on Stack Overflow. Now, I shared a link to this Reddit post on screen on my newsletter not so long ago, and it was the most read link in a while. Now, if we look on Reddit, we can see a theme that comes on fairly regularly. Now, a perfect example around this toxicity can be found within an article on Stack Overflow itself. Just in case you don't believe me, I've pulled up this article, which is one of many. Now, this article, I think it's fairly well written, and it's called ChatGPT seems to be better than Stack Overflow, both in speed and accuracy. What does this mean for us? So, I'm not going to read all of it, but the highlight is I've signed up for an account to OpenAI and asked ChatGPT a programming question, namely how to list all files in an Android device recursively. In an instant, it generated an answer and it was correct. Now, I'm not going to cover all of it, but let's see how people responded to this question. The first thing to point out about this article is that it's been downvoted over 62 times. So despite the author Dong Li having a pretty good point and expressing it fairly well, that doesn't seem to make a difference. Now, additionally on top of this, you can see that his answer is edited. So hopefully this is his original intentions in this message, however, you never know. But he's going to have his Stack Overflow reputation in tatters and he can't even ask the question potentially the way that he wanted to in the first place. The next thing to point out is just the flaming and the negativity. So are we talking about the same AI? ChatGPT, it's stupid, yeah, 64, 70 years. Underneath, there's even a worse one, and the answer was correct. So this Tom guy here was questioning the validity of Dong Li's code in the first place, even though Tom hasn't seen it at all. Obviously, he's got an opinion. And if we go down and scroll, you can see loads of these negative answers, loads of people going like, oh no, what you're saying is stupid, and on and on and on we go. And just based on that simple, quick example, you can start to see why certain developers can find Stack Overflow toxic and why they're looking for other alternatives. And just to emphasize this point, let's ask ChatGPT the same question. So first off, nope, we don't have any downvoting for asking stupid things. Second, I don't have developers calling me stupid because I've asked a valid question that someone might not agree with. And third, within a space of 5 to 10 seconds, I've got a response. Now, this response isn't going to have any of the bias. Basically, it's going to have pros and cons about the two approaches. However, it's taken off that opinionated developerness from my answers. And this is the reason why a lot of people, like it or lump it, are turning to ChatGPT rather than going through that toxic process on Stack Overflow. The facts seem to agree that we have a number of developers that are finding toxicity when asking questions on Stack Overflow, so they're turning to ChatGPT as an alternative. Now, the next thing to consider is how good an idea that actually is. Are the responses from ChatGPT good enough? Now, as shown in that previous Stack Overflow meta example, as soon as you mention ChatGPT as a development tool, some developer will inevitably counter this approach as stupid because of the quality of the results. To help answer this question, it might help to look at the question from an opposite perspective. So let's take a live view in Stack Overflow to think about things slightly differently. Now, when starting to think about ChatGPT versus Stack Overflow, I think most people will naturally think about the responses to answers. However, this isn't the whole picture. Now, on Stack Overflow, I've gone to the questions page and I'm on page 11 right now. So basically questions asked about half hour ago. Now, let's just scroll through and see how many of these questions actually have answers. Now, as we can see, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. This one's got an answer, 0. Downvotes, 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 0, 0. If I scroll to page 13, so 40 minutes ago, no answer, no answer, no answer, no answer, no answer, no answer, no answer. 2 down the bottom, one's a downvote, 15, one answer, 0, 0, 0, 0. And this is just, oh, look, well, we've got one which has been answered. So out of all the questions we've looked at, we found one which has actually got a successful answer. We can conclude this research from the tags list top users page. From here, we can see that in the last 7 days, 44% of the questions are unanswered. And if we go to 30 days, 40% of the questions are unanswered. Now, the point of me bringing all this up is to highlight the fact that it's not just ChatGPT versus Stack Overflow on answered accepted questions. The problem is much bigger. It's asking development questions on a whole. And in my opinion, getting some sort of result is way better than having to wait, say, half an hour, a day, 2 days, and getting no response whatsoever. So for a certain use case, say 20 or 30% of questions asked on Stack Overflow, those people would have been better off going to ChatGPT, even if those responses weren't perfect. Now, moving back to the point around accuracy of answered results, I would be amazed if Stack Overflow didn't win here, hands down. Now, on the screen in front of me, I've got the all-time top Stack Overflow users. So we've got Martin Peters and Alex Martelli and John Skeet, the legend. And I'll expect that any answer answered by one of these guys is going to be way more accurate compared to asking ChatGPT natively. So in terms of answered results, I think, Stack Overflow hand down is going to win. However, as we've seen, in maybe 50% of the time, 30% of the time, however you want to be conservative, then ChatGPT is going to give you an answer where Stack Overflow isn't going to give you anything at all. So the question remains, is ChatGPT a Stack Overflow killer? Well, obviously, at this point in time, definitely not. However, I was curious as to see if ChatGPT has actually had an impact on Stack Overflow. So let's turn to the data again. An interesting article came out on the 31st of January called "Developers Seem to be Ditching Stack Overflow Since ChatGPT Launched." Now, according to the research in this article, in terms of absolute website visits, they claim Stack Overflow has seen its numbers drop about 13% since ChatGPT's release. Now, the Stack Overflow traffic went from 279 million in November to around 247 million by the end of December 2022. Now, just to carry on the research from that blog, I wanted to see if those numbers jumped up at all. Now, unfortunately, from this similar web, I can only actually compare the results for the last 3 months. So what I can say is that after the research within that article was performed, then the levels have stayed roughly the same. So 250 million, dropped down to 240 million, popped back up to 257 million. Now, 6 months worth of data is not enough to make this a fair test. So granted, the data is a bit flaky on this one. Now, in terms of doing year-on-year research, Google Trends does provide that year-on-year view, and this shows that the term Stack Overflow is definitely decreasing rather than increasing over the last year. Now compare this with the trend for ChatGPT and you can potentially see some correlation. Now there's also a potential hybrid solution here. What about using ChatGPT to answer Stack Overflow questions? Well, this idea isn't looking too promising at present. In December 2023, Stack Overflow created a new policy that has banned ChatGPT from being used within people's answers. Now, this enforcement is an interesting move, mainly as the existing policy and the review process, if I'm honest, was pretty strict. Now, if we ban answers generated from ChatGPT, should we also ban answers from people with less than 1 year of coding experience? Theoretically, is there any real-world proof that provides someone trying to answer a question on Stack Overflow with little development experience is better or worse than an answer scanned by ChatGPT from the internet? Now, at the end of the day, posting a response and then getting that response marked as the accepted answer are very different things. So, if you want to be a 10x developer, why would you waste 5 hours of your life doing research when you can get exactly the same answer in a fraction of the time? If our aim is to ship great software, as long as we're doing that efficiently, isn't that the key thing? Now, regardless of where you sit on the fence, the facts are that a number of developers are becoming increasingly frustrated with using Stack Overflow and find it toxic. And ChatGPT provides an alternative option for those groups. Now, sadly, if you do find Stack Overflow toxic, that's probably not going to change anytime soon in the short term. And if you want to answer a quick question, turning to ChatGPT first for first-line research makes perfect sense to me. Now, why should anyone waste their time crafting a perfect Stack Overflow question that may or may not get an answer? It may get closed and you might get abused when there are other routes. Now, sadly, it kind of seems that for newer developers, asking ChatGPT is a less daunting task and quicker than asking for help from real people. So maybe one takeaway from this video is that if you see someone asking for help, instead of roasting that person or being negative, either ignore it and spend your time on something productive, or actually help that person as best you can. Now, whenever I see someone trolling, I always think it's such a waste of that person's life energy. That person can have spent exactly the same amount of time adding something positive to the world, being helpful, rather than being a smart ass. Now, that concludes the end of this video. Now, if you'd like to learn a bit more about ChatGPT and how you can use it to improve your productivity, then I've recorded a video which is called The Best ChatGPT Extensions for Visual Studio Code. Now, the link on that should be on the screen right now, so click on that to learn more. Otherwise, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in this world, and until next Sunday, happy coding.